Imagine sitting at a lonely rest stop late at night. You see a young girl with a much older man by her side. At first glance it looks normal, until she makes a secret hand signal, the international SOS for help. Most people would miss it, but one man didn't. A former Marine who instantly knew. This wasn't what it seemed. "Help me." The plea wasn't spoken out loud, but it was written in her eyes that darted around nervously, searching for someone, anyone, who might notice. The rest stop was unusually quiet that evening. The hum of old vending machines filled the air, blending with the occasional buzz of a flickering fluorescent light above. A semi-truck rumbled past on the highway, its headlights sweeping briefly over the benches before vanishing into the night. Most travelers were too tired, too distracted, or too caught up in their own journeys to pay attention to anyone else. On one of the benches sat a young black girl, no older than 14. Her small frame looked tense, her legs pressed tightly together, her hands constantly fidgeting in her lap. Beside her stood a man much older, perhaps in his late 40s or early 50s, a white man with a stiff posture and a sharp, watchful expression. His hand rested on her shoulder, not in a protective way but in a controlling one, his grip firm, possessive, almost like a warning. People passed by with snacks and sodas in their hands, barely glancing at the pair. To anyone not paying attention, it might have seemed normal, an uncle with his niece, maybe a father with his daughter. But there was nothing normal about the way her body flinched when his hand squeezed tighter, or the way her eyes filled with silent panic whenever he leaned too close. Jack saw it. Jack was no ordinary traveler. He was a former Marine, a man who had served in war zones where reading the smallest details often meant the difference between life and death. His instincts were sharp, his awareness honed over years of combat and survival. And from the moment he stepped out of his truck, he knew something wasn't right. At first, it was just a feeling, the kind of gut instinct soldiers learn never to ignore. But then it happened. The girl lifted her hand ever so slightly. It wasn't a wave, not a stretch. It was deliberate. She tucked her thumb into her palm and closed her fingers over it. The silent SOS signal. Jack froze. He'd seen it before, once in a training session and again overseas. A simple hand gesture that had saved countless lives, designed for moments exactly like this, when words could be dangerous, when asking for help out loud wasn't an option. His heart skipped a beat. This wasn't his imagination. This wasn't some random nervous tic. She was asking for help. She was trapped. He glanced around. Nobody else noticed. A couple walked toward the restroom, laughing about something on their phone. A family loaded their kids back into a minivan. Everyone else carried on as if nothing was wrong. Jack felt a surge of urgency. He was the only one who had seen it, the only one who understood. The girl's eyes flicked toward him for just a second, pleading, terrified, desperate. Then the man tightened his grip on her shoulder, pulling her closer, and the look disappeared, replaced with forced stillness. Jack's military training screamed inside his head. He could hear the voice of his drill sergeant from years ago. Situations change fast. Stay alert. Read the signs. Act with precision. Every instinct told him this was dangerous. The man's posture was defensive, aggressive even. The girl's fear was real. And the signal, Jack had no doubt, was intentional. He took a slow breath, steadying himself. Charging in recklessly could make things worse, could put the girl in even greater danger. But walking away? That wasn't an option. Not for Jack. Not for a Marine who had sworn to protect the vulnerable, no matter where or when. The world around him seemed to fade, the buzzing lights, the vending machines, the passing cars. All that remained was the girl, the man, and the unspoken cry for help. Jack's jaw clenched. He knew what he had to do. This wasn't going to be just another quiet stop on the highway. This was a battlefield of a different kind. And tonight, one young girl's freedom might depend on whether he had the courage to step forward. And Jack was never the kind of man to ignore a call for help. Jack's military training kicked in instantly. His heartbeat was steady, his breathing controlled. In the Marines, he had learned that rushing in without a plan was the fastest way to lose control. Here, at this quiet highway rest stop, the battlefield was different, but the rules of survival were the same. Observe, assess, act with precision. The man standing with the girl was speaking in a low voice, his words sharp, his tone edged with threat. Jack couldn't make out every syllable, but the intent was clear. Don't make a scene, don't you dare draw attention. The girl's small shoulders stiffened under his grip. She kept her head down, eyes locked on the ground, but then, just for a fraction of a second, she glanced up at Jack. Fear radiated from her like a silent scream. That one look was enough. Jack had seen it before. He remembered Afghanistan, walking through dusty villages where civilians were too afraid to speak. Sometimes, the only way they could communicate danger was through subtle signs, a hand signal, a shift in the eyes, a silent gesture that spoke louder than words. This was no coincidence. The girl wasn't just nervous. She was trapped. Jack forced himself to move naturally, disguising his intentions. He stretched his legs, rolled his shoulders, and began walking closer, as though he were just a tired traveler shaking off stiffness from a long drive. His body language was relaxed, but his mind was calculating. Every detail mattered. He studied the man first. Mid-40s, thinning hair, a sweat-stained t-shirt that clung to his chest. His forehead glistened with sweat, though the evening air was cool. His hands twitched slightly, restless, betraying nerves he couldn't control. He stood too close to the girl, his arm gripping her shoulder, not like a caring relative, but like someone guarding stolen property. His stance screamed possession and paranoia. He wasn't guiding her, he was restraining her. Jack's jaw tightened, though outwardly he stayed calm. Everything about the scene was wrong. The way the girl's body seemed to shrink under his touch. The way she avoided eye contact with everyone else at the rest stop. The way his fingers dug into her shoulder just a little too deep. This wasn't a father-daughter road trip. This was something darker. Jack angled himself so he could hear more. The man's voice hissed through clenched teeth. Keep quiet. Don't even think about it. Do you hear me? The girl gave the smallest nod, her lips trembling. Jack felt the old familiar fire ignite inside him. The same fire that pushed him to protect villagers overseas, the same fire that made him step between danger and the innocent. But he couldn't just charge in. Not yet. If he confronted the man too soon, the girl could be harmed before help arrived. He needed a strategy and fast. He scanned the rest stop. A family was piling into a van, too distracted to notice. A trucker walked past with a soda, eyes glued to his phone. Nobody else saw what Jack saw. He was alone in this. His marine instincts told him two things. 1, the girl was in immediate danger. 2, he had to gain control of the situation without escalating it too quickly. Pretending to check the vending machines, Jack positioned himself just a few feet away. He glanced back at the girl. Her hand twitched again, thumb pressed into her palm, fingers closing around it. The silent SOS. Jack's decision was made. He casually pulled his phone from his pocket, angling it so he could record without being obvious. Evidence. If this turned into a police matter, they'd need proof. At the same time, his other hand brushed against his belt, where he kept a small tactical flashlight, solid metal, heavy enough to use as a weapon if it came to that. He moved even closer, smiling faintly as though making small talk. "Evening," he said casually, his voice carrying the calm confidence of someone who had seen far worse than this. The man stiffened, his eyes flicking up, suspicious. The girl didn't move, but her eyes, those terrified eyes, brightened with the faintest glimmer of hope. Jack kept his posture loose, unthreatening, but inside he was coiled like a spring. He had faced armed insurgents, walked through minefields, and survived ambushes in foreign deserts. This was different, yes, but in its own way just as dangerous. Because this wasn't about war. This was about saving one frightened girl whose silent plea for help had found the right set of eyes. And Jack Harris was not about to look away. "Evening," Jack said calmly, approaching the pair. His voice carried a polite warmth, but his eyes stayed sharp, studying every flicker of movement. The man stiffened instantly, shoulders tense, like a predator suddenly aware it had been spotted. "We're fine," the man snapped, yanking the girl closer against his side. She flinched at the motion, her tiny frame shrinking as though she wished she could disappear into the bench. Jack forced a casual smile, refusing to let his growing anger bleed through. "Just making sure. Long drive." His tone was conversational, harmless, at least on the surface. The man's reply was curt, defensive. "None of your business." But Jack's instincts screamed louder now. Years of training had sharpened his senses to razor edge, and nothing about this man's behavior rang right. His eyes flickered too quickly, his jaw clenched too tight. And then Jack saw it, faint bruises peeking from under the girl's sleeve. His stomach turned cold, then hot, fury boiling through him. Still, he held his composure. Losing control would only put her at more risk. "I'm a vet," Jack said casually, keeping his tone steady as he shifted closer. "Spent a lot of years on the road, too. Seen cars break down, folks stranded at rest stops like this one. You folks need any help? Car trouble." The girl's head tilted ever so slightly. Her lips parted, trembling, as though words were trying to force their way out. But before she could say anything, the man cut in sharply. "I said, we're fine." His grip on her shoulder tightened, fingers digging into her skin. She winced. Jack's patience snapped. His friendly mask fell away, replaced by the Marine beneath, the protector who had seen enough suffering to know when to intervene. His voice dropped, the false cheer stripped from it. "See, the thing is," Jack said, stepping closer, his boots hitting the pavement with purpose, "when someone flashes a distress signal." He locked eyes with the girl, letting her see the promise of safety in his gaze. "I don't just walk away." The man froze, his entire body stiffening. His eyes narrowed to slits, suspicion twisting into hostility. "I don't know what you're talking about." His voice wavered, a crack of panic betraying him. Jack squared his shoulders, every inch of his Marine presence impossible to ignore. His body radiated command, strength, and the kind of authority no criminal could easily bluff against. He was no longer a traveler making small talk. He was a soldier stepping into battle. "Oh, I think you do." Jack's tone was low, steady, and dangerous, the voice of a man who had stood face to face with worse monsters in darker places and walked away. The man's hand twitched on the girl's shoulder, as if debating whether to run or fight. Jack didn't flinch, didn't look away. He knew this type. Cowards who preyed on the weak, men who thought nobody would notice. But Jack had noticed. And now, the predator was cornered. The silence between them stretched like a taut wire, heavy and threatening to snap. The girl's eyes darted between the two men, her small hands trembling in her lap. Jack kept his focus locked on the man, but his words were meant for her too. "You sent the signal," Jack said firmly, his gaze hardening. "I saw it. And I don't ignore calls for help. Not ever." The man's lips curled into a sneer. "Mind your business, soldier boy. She's with me." Jack's jaw flexed. His voice was calm, but beneath it was steel. "If that were true, you wouldn't be sweating bullets. You wouldn't be clamping down on her arm like she's property. And she sure as hell wouldn't be asking for help." For the first time, the man faltered, his bravado cracking. His eyes darted around the rest stop, searching for an escape, but Jack stepped subtly into his line of movement, blocking any chance of flight. The girl's hand twitched again, fingers curling over her thumb in the silent SOS. Jack gave the smallest nod, just enough to let her know, "I see you. I've got you." The air was thick now, tension coiling tighter with each passing second. Jack's body leaned forward slightly, ready to move, ready to protect. This wasn't a question anymore. It was a standoff. And Jack Harris was not backing down. The tension crackled in the air like a live wire. Jack's senses sharpened, his pulse steady, his breath controlled, his mind running through possible outcomes. He knew one thing for certain: this could escalate in an instant. Casually, almost lazily, he reached into his pocket, pulling out his phone. To the untrained eye, it looked like he was scrolling through messages. In reality, his thumb pressed firmly against the emergency dial, silently alerting the authorities. His other hand stayed loose by his side, ready for whatever came next. The girl noticed. Her eyes shimmered with fresh tears, not of despair this time, but of fragile hope. She was no longer completely alone. Someone had seen her silent cry for help, and someone was standing up to the man who had stolen her voice. Jack's gaze hardened as he took a small step closer. "Why don't you let her answer for herself?" he said firmly, his tone carrying the weight of command. "She's old enough to speak." The man sneered, but the sneer lacked confidence now. His grip on the girl tightened instinctively, though the tremor in his hand betrayed his fear. "She's my niece," he snapped. "She doesn't need to talk to strangers." Jack's jaw clenched. He had heard that excuse before, in combat zones, in police briefings, in the stories of survivors. It was the same line predators always used to explain away their possession of someone else. He didn't buy it for a second. His eyes narrowed into slits of steel. "If that's true," Jack said coldly, "then you won't mind if we wait for highway patrol to come by. Shouldn't take long. I already called." The words hit the man like a bullet. His face drained of color, his jaw working silently as he searched for a response. He shifted uncomfortably on his feet, adjusting his grip on the girl, but instead of holding tighter, his hand slipped slightly, uncertainty loosening his control. Jack took that as his opening and stepped forward, his voice carrying the authority of a man who had led others into combat zones and brought them home alive. "I've dealt with men like you before," he said, his tone low and dangerous. "The difference is, you're not going to get away with it today." The girl seized that moment. She edged just one step closer to Jack. Tiny, hesitant, but monumental. That single movement shattered the fragile illusion the man had been clinging to. His facade crumbled, his supposed story of being a caring uncle collapsing with the simple act of a terrified child seeking protection elsewhere. The man cursed under his breath, his grip faltering completely. His eyes darted toward the parking lot, scanning for an escape route. Trucks roared past on the highway, their headlights flashing across the asphalt, each one a reminder that witnesses could arrive at any second. Jack didn't move, didn't waver. He stood tall and unyielding, the line between the girl and her captor. His stance told the man everything he needed to know. There would be no easy retreat, no chance of dragging the girl away unseen. "Think carefully," Jack warned, his voice like gravel. "You make one wrong move, and you'll regret it for the rest of your life." The man's lips twitched, his bravado crumbling further. For the first time, the predator looked like what he truly was, a coward, stripped of power in the presence of someone who refused to bow to intimidation. The girl clutched the strap of her backpack tightly, her knuckles white, her body shaking. But her eyes, those trembling eyes, stayed locked on Jack. And in them was the faintest flicker of belief that maybe, just maybe, she might finally be safe. The silence stretched between them, thick with danger and possibility. Jack's phone, still in his hand, vibrated softly, confirmation that help was on the way. But Jack knew he couldn't count on sirens alone. In moments like this, every second mattered. And in this moment, the balance of power was shifting. The man realized it too. His curse grew louder this time, muttered in frustration. He yanked his hand back from the girl as if burned, his eyes flashing with both fury and fear. His plan was unraveling before his eyes, and Jack Harris was the reason why. The battlefield was set. The lines were drawn. And Jack was ready for whatever happened next. Moments later, the silence of the night shattered as flashing red and blue lights lit up the entire rest stop. The quiet hum of distant highway traffic was drowned out by the screech of patrol cars braking hard against the asphalt. Tires spat gravel, doors slammed open, and within seconds, armed officers spilled out, their hands instinctively hovering near their holsters, eyes sharp and scanning. Jack exhaled slowly. Relief wasn't something he allowed himself often, but in that moment it washed over him like a tide. He had given dispatch precise details, military precise. His voice calm, clear, every description etched with the clarity of a man trained never to waste words. That precision had left no room for delay. And now help had arrived. The man stiffened at the sight of the officers. His bravado cracked instantly, desperation leaking into his voice. Wait. This is all a misunderstanding, he shouted, his tone rising, frantic. He pushed himself between the girl and the patrol lights as though trying to shield his lie with his body. She's my niece. She doesn't know what she's saying. But his words came too fast, too practiced, the rehearsed excuses of someone who'd been cornered before. And then, finally, the girl found her voice. Trembling, broken, but steady enough to carry truth. She lifted her chin, her lips quivering as she forced the words out. He took me, she whispered, then louder, stronger. I don't even know him. Time seemed to freeze for a second. Those 5 words cut through the night sharper than any blade. The officers didn't hesitate. Training took over. In one fluid motion, they moved in, surrounding the man, their commands firm and unified. Hands where we can see them. Down now. The man flailed, shouting his protests, his voice cracking under the weight of his unraveling story. But there was no escape. 2 officers grabbed his arms, forcing him to the ground with practiced force. The gravel crunched under his knees as the cuffs locked around his wrists, the sharp metallic click marking the end of his control. He kicked once, twice, yelling curses into the night, but his power was gone, dragged away with each step as the officers pulled him toward the patrol car. The girl stood frozen for a moment, her small frame shaking violently, her chest rising and falling in uneven gasps. And then she moved, stumbling forward into Jack's arms, clinging to him as though he were the last solid thing in a collapsing world. Her tears soaked into his jacket, her fists gripping the fabric tight. Jack placed a steady, grounding hand on her shoulder. His voice softened, carrying none of the hard edge it had held against the man. Now it was calm, reassuring, the voice of safety itself. "You're okay now," he murmured. "You're safe." The words broke something inside her, a dam she'd been holding back for who knew how long. She sobbed openly, the release raw and unfiltered, but in those sobs was also relief, the first breath of freedom. As the last of the struggle died down, one officer approached Jack, his flashlight beam sweeping across the ground before settling on him. "Sir," the officer said with quiet respect, "you saved her life tonight." Jack shook his head slowly, his expression unreadable but his eyes heavy with something deeper. "No," he said firmly. "She saved herself. She was brave enough to ask for help. All I did was listen." The officer nodded, a faint smile tugging at his lips. He knew men like Jack didn't seek credit, but he also knew heroes when he saw them. The girl pulled back just enough to look up at Jack, her tear-streaked face illuminated by the glow of the patrol lights. Her eyes, though still rimmed with fear, carried a new glimmer, gratitude, trust, and something that looked like strength returning. She gave him the smallest, trembling smile. A silent thank you. A memory etched forever. Jack offered her a reassuring nod before gently guiding her toward the officers who would take her to safety, to people who would protect her now. Then he turned back toward his car. The patrol lights painted the night in shifting colors, casting long shadows across the asphalt as he walked. His boots crunched against the gravel, steady, purposeful. He didn't look back at the man being shoved into the back of the cruiser. That part was over. Justice had begun its course. What mattered was the girl. The fact that she would live another day, speak another word, laugh another laugh. Under the glow of flashing red and blue, Jack whispered the words that had carried him through battlefields overseas and battles in his own heart. Never ignore a cry for help, no matter how silent. The words lingered in the night, carried by the hum of idling engines and the fading echoes of sirens. And with that, Jack Harris disappeared into the dark highway once more, not seeking thanks, not waiting for recognition, but ready, always ready, to answer the next silent call for help. If this story moved you, don't forget to like the video, share it with someone who needs hope, and hit that subscribe button so you never miss the next powerful story. Your support keeps us bringing you more.